What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Monday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here. My NFL guru is Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. 1029 The Game, Broad Street South. Catch him every Monday at 8 o'clock. But tonight, because it's Eagles in Seattle, we might do a little shuffling. He might actually join us on Martinez and Company on the Tony Bruno Sports Network. Don't forget to download the app and check out us on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. All right, so another weekend of NFL action in the books. Well, cap it off. You got the Eagles and the Seattle Seahawks tonight. We'll get into that in a moment, but let's start with, I guess, two games that stood out yesterday. And this is why the NFL is such a week-to-week proposition, right? And I tweeted it out at Rich Q on Q, Lloyd at Lloyd Vance on X. The Dallas Cowboys might be the biggest tease in the world. Like, they might mind F their fans. I mean, just when you think you figure this team out, dominant at home, wrecking ball, train wrecking people, putting up 40, they go on the road in a hostile environment against Buffalo in a game, Lloyd, that was not even competitive. I mean, the Buffalo Bills just basically ran roughshod right through Dallas in that defense, and Prescott didn't even look like an MVP caliber talent yesterday. That's a bad loss for Dallas. Buffalo's starting to churn out big-time wins here and there. I mean, are we looking at the Dallas Cowboys now on this Monday and saying they're a fraud, or basically they just stubbed their toe against a team that was really desperate for a win?
Well, Q, it's a lot like we were talking about on a preview show at the end of last week, coming into this game. The Dallas Cowboys are built for the Jerry Dome. They're 7-0 at home, very comfortable there. They were out in the elements in this one. It was cold. It was a little rainy out there, and they were physically beaten. The physicality of this Buffalo Bills team is starting to come forward. They had no fear of Dallas, and they knew this was their game. Buffalo's in kind of desperation mode now, as we know. Q, they probably are going to need to probably win out. The AFC is very tight right now. They're in the number 9 position. They're fighting with the Cincinnati Bengals, the Houston Texans, and the Indianapolis Colts for that last spot. So they knew they had to take care of business. And Josh Allen was ready and willed his team to victory. Yes, he didn't throw the ball that much in this game. Only 7 of 15 for 94 yards, no interceptions. He did have a touchdown pass, but he was running the ball with authority. And then they had Cook, who really stepped forward, 25 rushes, 179 yards, and a TD. This young guy was running, and that offensive line, led by the big tackle Dawkins, was moving Dallas, and Dallas had no answer. And then offensively, Dallas just looked out of sync, Q, and they looked like they were ready to go home. As you said, right from the get-go in this one, it was 21-3 at the half, and this game was over.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a game that the Cowboys needed to stay pace in the NFC playoff seedings and, of course, the NFC East. I mean, think about what transpired over the weekends. The Cincinnati Bengals came back from left for dead, down 14 against Minnesota. You've got the Steelers, by the way, 2-0-1 with the picks. I mean, we loved the Colts over the Steelers, who made another quarterback change. Now Trubinsky gets benched, Rudolph's in there. And then you get the Lions, who basically, just shut down this Broncos win streak, and they put up 42. And, it's like the shuffling, right? The Eagles, the 49ers, the Lions, Dallas loses, the Lions win. The 49ers looked really impressive. I've said it before the season, I said it during the season, the middle of the season, and right now. For my money, when healthy, nobody is beating the San Francisco 49ers. We might as well just stamp Brock Purdy as MVP, because the kid has played like an MVP. I know he deferred and said it should go to his teammate Christian McCaffrey, but be that as it may, I mean, look, they just absolutely thoroughly whipped the ass of the Cardinals. I mean, that game, aside from a moment or two early on, was not even competitive. They're putting up 40-something odd points. I believe they're the best team in the NFL right now, and I've said that since pretty much week 1, even when the Eagles were 10-1.
Yes, and the Niners continue to pile up the wins, Q. I think it's 6 in a row now after that 3-game losing streak. They went into their bye. They cleaned some things up. And what you're seeing with this team is they're hitting on all cylinders at the right time in the season. And They are the best team in the NFL. And of course, it all starts with the NFC, and they're just dominant in this conference. They have to keep winning in order to keep the Eagles from trying to steal that spot. I know the Eagles got a big game this evening in San Francisco and Seattle that we're talking about in a minute, but it's clear dominance. As you were saying, Christian McCaffrey, 18 rushes, 115 yards, and 1 TD. He's running behind Banks and Williams, and they're just dominant on that side. They're just clearing people out, and then Kittle's doing a good job as well. And Brock Purdy, very efficient, and everybody's saying, yeah, he doesn't have, he's not driving his car, but you know what, he's the guy that's in the leader position. And we see too often that if a team is the number one seed and they win their division, more than likely you're seeing that quarterback win the MVP. So, Purdy, another great game, 4 TDs, no interceptions. And as you're saying, this is just a dominant team. And a big player that no one's talking about is Ward. He had 2 big picks on the back end, and I think he took one to the house. So they can beat you a variety of ways, Q.
You go back to the game they lost against Cincinnati. Remember, they had that little stretch where they lost to Cleveland, missed field goal. They stubbed their toe against Minnesota, and Cincinnati. We thought Cincinnati was going to start being that Cincinnati we're accustomed to, but he threw for 365 in that game. Since then, I mean, his numbers: 298, 333, 202, 314, 368, 242, 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 1 touchdown. Rarely turning the ball over, distributing the football. For my money right now, MVP. You look around the NFC, and Chicago had an opportunity to win a ridiculous game yesterday against Cleveland. That ball's in that kid's hands. They couldn't get it done. Flacco and the defense making some plays late. Flacco is just lighting up all over the place. And then you got Tampa Bay, and I threw this out there. Tampa Bay exposed Green Bay's. Green Bay defense stinks. Tampa Bay put up 34, but you got to start talking about Baker Mayfield as comeback player of the year. Maybe he solidified his slot as a starting quarterback with Tampa Bay going forward. I thought the coach was going to be on the hot seat. They appear to be making a late push, perhaps into the playoffs, but you got Cleveland and the veteran Flacco, and then you got the cast-off and Baker Mayfield with Tampa Bay. Those two teams trying to vie for a playoff spot. Obviously, Cleveland, a much better record and a shorter road, if you will, but you got to be impressed with both those teams respectively.
Start with the Bucs, and the Bucs, that's their 3rd straight win, and Todd Bowles is getting this team to start playing at a key time in the season. And Baker Mayfield, you're right, he's a guy I've always kind of killed, but he was right. He's been playing with a lot of moxie, moving the football. This week had 4 touchdowns, no interceptions in a game, threw for over 380 yards in this game. And as you said, they were very dominant. The Bucs really showed that they now can go on the road and win a key game. Lambeau was always that tough place to play, but Baker clearly outperformed Jordan Love, and Jordan Love in this one. The younger receivers kind of stepped up, but the Bucs made sure they just shut it down at the end. And Winfield in that defense is doing a great job in terms of getting turnovers at key times. I think the Browns too were kind of lucky to get away with that victory there. Flacco was playing. It was bad, Joe Flacco. He had 3 interceptions in this one, throwing balls and where you're like, what are you doing? But also, Justin Fields on the other side, he made a lot of mistakes too. And Cleveland's just going to stack these W's and keep moving forward.
Yeah, but you mentioned the 3 picks. He also threw for close to 400 yards. And the one pass was, he threaded the needle. I don't know who the wide receiver was. I don't know I think it might have been Cooper. I don't know if it was or actually, no, I think it was to play. Yeah, maybe it was Cooper, the tight end, but double coverage, boom, right down the sidelines. It's amazing, too, in a league where there's such piss poor backup quarterbacking play and bad quarterbacking play. They pull this guy off the street, and he's winning a bunch of games, and they're 9-5 right now. Look, Baltimore, we'll get into them in a moment, gets to win against Jacksonville. The Texans rebounded nicely. And then you have Miami 30-0 over the Jets. And now the talk is, all right, when are you going to fire Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh? And we talked about it. I said it should have been done last year. Zach Wilson, was he dehydrated? Was he not dehydrated? Was he quitting on the team? Did he get banged up? Aaron Rodgers, what the hell's the difference at this point if he comes back? I mean, this team has zero fight in them, period. And when you go out again and you have no resistance, you put up zero resistance, zero fight. Let me just go through the last 4 weeks for the Jets. They got waxed by Buffalo 32-6. They got waxed by Miami 34-13. They hung tight in crappy conditions against a bad Atlanta team and lost. They upset Houston. Everyone wanted to anoint Zach Wilson as the franchise quarterback, stick him in the Hall of Fame, and then he promptly goes out, doesn't even crack 50-something odd yards. I don't think. I'd have to look it up. And they lose 30-0 to Miami. They have put up zero fight, zero resistance. I don't know how in the hell they beat Denver. I don't know how in the hell they beat the Eagles. And of course, they got a gift against the Giants. So right now at 5-9, mathematically eliminated, they're done. But at this moment, like, what's the point of even having this head coach on the sidelines to close out the season? There's zero. And the other thing is, Aaron Rodgers got bailed out big time, because I think it's a crock of shit if people really thought Aaron Rodgers was going to play. I really do. It's just, you can say it, and now you can pull the excuse, well, we're out of it, they don't need me. And anyone who would actually allow him to go out and play behind that offensive line, to me, that's grounds for a firing. That's grounds for a dismissal. So where are you right now with this debacle of a Jets team that didn't even show up yesterday?
You mean after last week where everybody's patting Wilson on the back and he had that great victory? Everybody's like, oh, he's back. Yeah, well, guess what? Bad Zach Wilson was back against, and he was in Miami and he played terrible. Yeah, and then you wonder, all right, he's in concussion protocol, but he played the majority of that game and he was very bad. And you started to wonder, okay, maybe they're going to bench him. Trevor Siemian comes in, he throws 2 interceptions, and Miami was in total control in this game. And it's 24-0 at the half, and you knew the Jets had no answer and no way of coming back in this one. And as you said, Q, it's kind of an embarrassing situation at this moment. Woody Johnson, who's the owner there, he's got to know that it's time for a change. Robert Salah has lost his team, lost the locker room. And unfortunately, Joe Douglas, the guy who I covered here in Philadelphia when he was with the Eagles, he's the architect of this mess. And they allowed themselves to build a team around a 40-year-old quarterback who got hurt 4 snaps into the season, and they just had no plan after that. In particularly, as you said, the backup situation is just egregious. And Aaron Rodgers, we all knew, as you said, Q, he wasn't coming back. Even if there's no way he's coming back from that injury. And now they're mathematically eliminated, and maybe he should go in the corner now. Now that we know he's not going to play, but Q, he's going to have something to say the rest of the way.
I think they blow it up. And they tell Aaron Rodgers, you don't like it, take a freaking hike. I mean, that's where you're at right now. You have to basically implode it, explosion, start it up, wreck it down with a wrecking ball, and build it back up, because the franchise is broken, and the head coach really should be at fault because he kept going back to the quarterback. I mean, why doesn't Joe Douglas? I know it's, again, Monday morning quarterbacking, but how come Joe Douglas doesn't make that call to Flacco? Right?
Yeah, I don't understand why they wouldn't get a more veteran guy. And okay, fine. You want to have Wilson on the roster to save, don't have an egg in your face over this guy's the #1 pick and everything like that. But the guy behind him should be someone that's able to step in and contribute, not a Tim Boyle type.
I was adamant with you on Q and BYP, and even with Martinez and company, that the Cutlet run ends against the Saints. It was inevitable. The kid got sacked, I think, 6 or 7 times. Offensively, the Giants did nothing. Defensively, they did nothing. New Orleans Saints are not as bad as we think they are. They played soft coverage with Wink. They didn't get to Carr. They gave up big plays. Aside from a couple throws here and there and a couple missed throws and a couple drops, Saquon nowhere to be found. Waller had 1 play high. It disappeared. What the hell do they have Sterling Shepard on the roster for? Slayton with drops. Thibodeau was non-existent. The list goes on and on. It was so inevitable. And I'm actually happy that they won. Because now the nonsense and the crap and the shit about Tommy DeVito and Tommy Cutlets, he's the franchise quarterback going for, it ends. He's not better, nor did I ever think he was better than Daniel Jones. What he gave the Giants for a couple weeks was a little juice and a little life, but this team was going nowhere. And now you're going to have the idiots that are going to come out, oh, I'm worried they won a couple games, they ruined their draft position. It doesn't matter. You're going out there to play. It doesn't matter who you stick out there, whether it's friggin' Tommy DeVito, Danny DeVito, or Tyrod Taylor. It does not matter. The coach does not want to lose games. For the idiots and the talking heads that are all over the country, and most notably in New York, on the radio and on TV, sitting there saying you ruin your draft stock, you ruin your draft chances, get a friggin' clue. There's no tanking. They were going to play the game to win it. With all that being said, this is who they are, and this is who this kid is. Stop with this kid is better than Daniel Jones. I don't want to hear this nonsense anymore. This was fun for 3 or 4 weeks. It ends. The cutlet got marinated. The ziti got overcooked. It's over.
Q, it was a great story. And as I said, Q, it has shelf life. And it came quick in this game. And you saw all the Saints, as you said, their defensive line was living in the Giants' backfield. And then, of course, they wanted to shove it in his face, kept doing his celebration in it over and over again. And the Giants had no answer. And we know this Giants team it's a rebuilding team. It's a team before DeVito even stepped on the field. We knew the roster was kind of depleted and they were going to need to rebuild this thing. So, you would like to see them put up a little bit more effort against the Saints, losing 24-6 to a Saints team, as we said, that's kind of middle of the road as well. But they got a little juice for a couple weeks, and now everything's coming back to normal. But DeVito's who he is. He's an undrafted free agent who had a nice run, and now I think he could be a pretty good backup, possibly to Daniel Jones, and kind of learn underneath him. But as we talked about, this is the football version of Linsanity. And now he's probably going to go back into the background. And they have a couple big games against the Eagles. We'll see if he shows up in either of those games.
And maybe he does. And maybe they win a game to close out the season, or they beat the Rams. I don't believe they're beating the Eagles. I mean, the early line, they're 10.5-point dogs. But the point being, the offensive line has always been a problem. So again, I don't care who's back there. Address the offensive line. Saquon did nothing, too many drops. I love the kid's gumption. I love that he grinds and he hustles and he took advantage of his opportunity. But teams get film on guys fast. This is the NFL. They make adjustments. He's not turning the ball over, but he's also holding on to the football too long. And he's a tough kid. We saw the hits. He can scramble. He can make some nice throws. But I feel as though I think it's not even about him. It's more about the narrative that people forgot exactly how successful Daniel Jones was last year and what he meant to this organization and franchise, because they went on the road and they won a playoff game, and he won a substantial amount of games last year because of his arm, his legs, and his moxie. And he played a hell of a game in the playoffs. And I just think they're doing a disservice. It's so easy to come out and say the guy stinks. Look what the backup's doing. But we've got all off season to let that sit and marinate. No pun intended. Has Kadarius Toney broken Patrick Mahomes? I mean, I know they got the win yesterday against New England, but I mean, he might be the biggest goofball in the NFL right now. And he's got talent, but yet he's a freaking clown and a knucklehead. They got the win. They don't look like gangbusters, though. But, I mean, you got even Patrick Mahomes, who hasn't really been a very emotional kind of guy when things go wrong. And we've now seen it the last 2 weeks.
Cool. And you get a little golf clap. Hey, you beat the 3-11 Patriots. All right. They got their W, and Mahomes, you could see him and Andy Reid were relieved more than anything. They shut it down at the very end. They're kneeling on the ball rather than trying to get some more points. They just wanted to get out of there. And Toney, the ball clanks off his hands and into the air, and then it's coming back the other way. And you could see it's just a matter of time before Mahomes and Andy Reid have had enough of his act. Yes, Mahomes walks up and puts his arm around him, but you can tell he really has had enough of him. And they're trying to get the ball to Rice, who's doing a nice job stepping up for them. And they were in a bad spot because they did not have their running back, Pacheco. He had that shoulder injury. Rice had 9 catches for 91 yards and a TD. But this team, they're not leaking oil, Q, but there's a lot of foreshadowing around this Chiefs team. As you're moving into the playoffs, you're like, this is not going to work. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yep.
Kelsey's not himself. He had a couple bad drops
Bad
over the
drops.
middle, and just it does cannot get open anymore. So a lot of problems there with the Chiefs. Nobody's going to shed any tears for them. Much like the Patriots, they won a lot. And so maybe they need to clean some things up, and Brett Veach and Andy Reid have some work to do this offseason.
I mean, this is crazy, right? If you look at the conference right now, and let me pull this up. Let's try this again. Baltimore, Miami. Baltimore's 11-3. They drubbed Jacksonville last night, even though they lost a running back. Miami's 10-4. Kansas City's 9-5. Cleveland's 9-5. Jacksonville's 8-6. Cincinnati's 8-6. They're alive. Indianapolis, Houston, Buffalo's right there. I think Pittsburgh's done. I think Denver's done. I mean, I think we kind of see where these teams are. I don't trust Indianapolis. I think Houston's going to, even though Indianapolis had the nice win, if Stroud comes back, I like Houston edging them, but it's very top heavy. Baltimore looks to be the most complete team in the AFC. You saw what they did last night. I know everyone's going to talk about Lamar Jackson now, perhaps sliding in and being the NFL MVP. I still think that distinction belongs to Brock Purdy, especially if they get home field advantage throughout the playoffs in the NFC. But to Baltimore's credit last night, that's a big win for them, right? I mean, you go on the road, you beat a team in Jacksonville that's upstart. Trevor Lawrence gets banged up, concussion protocol. Jackson didn't really put up gaudy numbers, but what stands out is that he killed him with his legs, and they ran for over 250 yards and averaged 6 yards a carry. So, and it's unfortunate because I do believe they just lost their running back, Keaton Mitchell, too.
Mitchell is out with an ACL now, too. So that was unfortunate for them. And they're going to lean on Gus Edwards and the rest of those back there. But Q, they have a clear identity with the Baltimore Ravens. And they're playing old school football. So
Yeah.
they're going to rush their number one rushing attack in the National Football League, averaging close to like 200 yards a game. And you have Lamar Jackson. He's being efficient. He missed some throws last night, and his receivers dropped a couple passes here and there. But he did more than enough to win this game, and he rushed, as you said, for just under 100 yards, and then he was getting the ball out of his hands quickly and making plays. So, they're built around their defense, and that defense shut down the Jaguars, and they beat up physically Trevor Lawrence, as you said. So, they're a dangerous team. They're number one seed in the NFL, and we're going to find out next week really who the Baltimore Ravens are. They're going to San Francisco, then they have Miami, and then they finish with Pittsburgh. So these next couple of games are really going to tell us about them. And then you have Miami, who's sitting in that number 2 seed. They won their game, but against the Jets, but there's still another one where you're like, okay, there's some things you don't like in this game. Particularly, Tariq Hill did not play in this game, and the offense just did not seem in sync after that. So they are going to play Dallas this week, another answer game, and then they're at Baltimore, and then they finish with Buffalo, which could be a game that could be for that division.
Yeah, I don't think Miami is a very physically tough team. I don't. I think they're more finesse. It's amazing what Mozart was able to do. I think he had 19 career touchdowns coming into the season. He's got 20. I mean, that's just amazing testament to him. Monday edition on Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game. Broad Street South, kind enough to join us. We think he might be joining us on Martinez and Company, 6 to 8, Tony Bruno Sports Network. Don't forget to download the app. You can catch us every Monday to Friday from 6 to 8. The Steelers, real quick. DeMontez Casey suspended for the rest of the season on a really nasty, vicious hit. Pittsburgh's really, the nice story. I think, what were they, 7-2, 7-3, and then they dropped a couple games. Tomlin's on the hot seat. I listen to sports talk radios, all across the country. I mean, they're absolutely just hammering Tomlin. And the one thing about the Steelers organization is you go back 50 years, they basically have had 3 head coaches, right? Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. Tomlin's been at the helm for 17 years. The big thing is, Super Bowl winner, gets to the playoff, competitive team, never had a losing season. I'm wondering, though, if the shelf life now, if the Steelers, who rarely fire head coaches, can you see them making a drastic change in the offseason, and that change being firing the head coach, Mike Tomlin?
No, I don't see that happening, Q. And I've known a lot of people in that organization for a long time, and they're about the Rooney way. They're going to stick with their guy, and like Chuck Noll that used to be there said, if you listen to media, you're going to be sitting there with them. So the media and the fans are going to swirl and say what they want, but they're going to batten down the hatches and try to rebuild this thing. Obviously, as you said, they got some serious holes. Pickett doesn't seem to be answer at the quarterback position. Now they got Trubisky and Mason
Well, how
Rudolph.
about
None of
Pickens?
them, yeah,
That kid's a dog. He's
he
so
is.
disinterested. He doesn't
And there's a
block. He doesn't
locker
run
room
routes.
problem there, Q. There's a locker room problem, and you can tell that's kind of things they need to clean up. There's some dissension in the ranks there, and the defense is playing hard, and the offense is not helping them out, and there's a lot going on. So he hasn't had a losing season thus far, Mike Tomlin, but he may be in danger of that this season. And right now they're 7-7. They're holding on to their playoff lives, but you have Houston hard charging. You talked about Cincinnati. They've jumped into that 7th spot. Indianapolis is there. And then Buffalo Bills are playing probably some of the best football in the AFC. So I do agree with you that the Steelers probably are going to be out of the playoffs, and then they're going to need to clean some things up there. But
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin will be part of the plan.
There's going to be coaches. I mean, look, I think Arthur Smith's on his way out in Atlanta. They're going to fluctuate between Ritter or Tyler Heineke. We mentioned 9, 10, maybe 11 head coaching vacancies. And then, of course, again, you've got tonight the Philadelphia Eagles and Seattle, and it comes out, I think, sometime Sunday. Glazer was reporting it. Eagles, reporters were reporting it about the changing of the guard, if you will, when you start to look at the defensive coordinator position. And it opens up to a really interesting conversation and debate, because this is something that Glazer reported, I think, right around 12:30-ish, right before the 1:00 kickoff. Now, granted, because of everything, the way it transpired last night, the Eagles are in the playoffs. So, hey, congrats to the Eagles, whatever, golf clap, here we go. But when you hear that now Desai has been relegated to the press box and Patricia is now your de facto defensive coordinator, there was a little bit of confusion of, okay, who's running the show? And McMullen, Johnny Mack, wrote to clarify, Sean Desai remains a DC, but Matt Patricia has assumed play calling responsibilities. Well, Matt Patricia and Darius Slay did not see eye to eye. The irony is Slay had a small procedure done. I think he got his knee scoped. He's not available, but timing of everything, whatever. I don't know if this is a brilliant move, because the defense over the next couple of weeks has a softer schedule after Seattle, or is this a panic move where the players, there's reports too that some of the players, wanted Desai to let them really review film and give input. And that's kind of a rarity at times. So this is all heading into Monday Night Football. And oh, by the way, we don't even know if Jalen Hurts is going to go. We don't know if Geno Smith's going to go. We don't know if Drew Lock's going to go for Seattle. So a lot of stuff happening for the Philadelphia Eagles right now.
Yeah, Q, and this is desperation. That's what it is, Q. And it's crazy. This team is 10-3. As you said, they wrapped up the playoff position after what shook out yesterday. But this defense, as I've been harping on over and over again in all our shows and stuff, but they have allowed 29 pass TDs. They're 31st in the NFL in that category. So that is just a microcosm of what's wrong with this defense. And they have Patricia there always as this advisor and everything, waiting in the wings. But I'm hearing this is the front office kind of driving this, Q, that they decided that Matt Patricia should try to put the last finger in the dam and fix this thing and this mess. And let's face it, Sean Desai he's the fall guy in this situation, and he's going to be the guy that's going to fall on his sword. And at the end of the season, they'll move on from him. But this is total desperation. They're trying to fix this defense that's a mess. I think a lot of it, Howie Roseman and the personnel department did not give enough pieces, particularly the linebackers that they put out there on the field this year. They didn't just they decided not to re-sign Kazir White. Edmonds, the safety that they signed from the Steelers, we knew he was not a very good player. And then you had some injuries there, and that really exposed what's going on with that secondary. So desperation.
So you think
Yeah.
Desai is one and done?
Oh, he's totally one and done. This is all window dressing. Oh, he's still on the staff, and they basically told him, to go up in the booth and kind of leave everything in Patrician's hands. I don't think he's going to do much this evening. What's he going to have, the binoculars? He's not going to be calling the plays. So it's an ugly situation, Q. And maybe Patricia can fix this thing, but I don't think it's going to get any better. I think they're going to win this game, but as we move into the playoffs and you go against these better quarterbacks, they're going to expose that defense even further.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because, and I want to touch on it for a moment because they're covered. When you look at the way they blitz, right? Their pressure, zero creativity, and when their opponent run guys freely in motion, right? Misdirection. I mean, we saw what San Francisco was able to do. We saw what Dallas was able to do the second time around. Buffalo and Kansas City did it. These guys speed off the edges. You start to get these guys moving around in space. It almost looked as though the Eagles were confused. And again, we can't also give a pass to the Bradburys and the Slays of the world. They have not played particularly well. Remember, this is a team that's predicated on what? Getting to the quarterback. And they've given up a ton of chunk yardage and chunk plays. And I do agree with you. I think this was a Howie move per se, right? Lurie signs off. Howie goes to Sirianni. Get rid of this guy. But it goes back to what you said before the season, that it's very hard to overcome when you get rid of an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. It's going to take a little bit of time, and there's going to be some growing pains. And now all of a sudden, at the most critical point of the season, we're seeing the offense is broken and we're seeing the defense can't stop anyone. So, Hurts is expected to play flu-like symptoms, but doesn't have the flu. So we don't want to speculate. I don't know if Geno right now, questionable, whatever the rulings are right now with these injury reports, probable, questionable, whatever the hell it is. But yeah, be that as it may, Mariota better be loose. He better be loose, because if Hurts is, again, drained, exhausted, getting banged around, if he's not feeling the part and he's trying to gut it out, this is a big game for both these teams respectively. And I know the line's kind of been sitting at 3.5. It's fluctuated a little bit. Man, if you're the Eagles in that environment, just do what the fans want you to do. Do what the fans have been preaching for the last month with signs outside the complex. Run the rock. Run the Duke.
We brought Swift there for a reason, man. It's time for them. And that offensive line, we said they're a physical line. They run the football.
Yep.
And let Kelsey and those guys ball their fist up and win you this game, even if it has to be ugly. This is a must-win situation for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, they're 10-3 and they're in the playoffs, but they want to keep pace. Now they have a chance to jump ahead of Dallas again and then start moving towards. They still have a very good chance for that number one seed if they win tonight. So winnable games down the stretch. Giants, Arizona, Giants. They got to take care of business. But as you said, this may be Drew Lock versus Marcus Mariota. How about that on the marquee?
Yeah, I mean, and the irony is that the NFL flexed this game. If this was a 1:00 game yesterday or 4:25, Jalen Hurts is not playing.
Yeah, they already said that.
Right?
Yeah. And they should lean on Swift. They still have Swift and Brown and Goddard's getting more healthy. So the Eagles have a lot of weapons. And Seattle has had trouble on their back end covering as well with Jamal Adams and the rest of the crew back there. So, been back and forth on this game. And as you said, it's a 3-point line, but I think the Eagles are going to do just enough to get the win here. And I think it may come down to their kicker, Elliott, who's one of the best in the league.
Jamal Adams stinks, by the way. Guy can't cover shit. Since their last win against Washington. Oh, he can. He's just, he had that big game against the Giants when he was with the Jets a couple of years ago, and everyone wanted to stick him in the Hall of Fame. They lost to the Rams, the 49ers, Dallas, and the 49ers. So they've had a tough little stretch. They were at 1.6-3. So this is stop the bleeding type of game. This is a tricky spot, man. It really is, because if Seattle wins this game, they've got 3 very winnable games coming up. Tonight, a win gets them to 7-7. They've got Tennessee, Pittsburgh, and Arizona. If you're Seattle, to me, this is a playoff game.
Yes, and if they're smart, they're gonna try to get Lockett going, Metcalf, and Smith and Jigba. Because the Eagles, we know their back end is beat up. Number one, they have a lot of injuries. Their Slay's not playing, as you said, and then they have, even when they're fully healthy, they've had trouble in coverage all season. So Shaq Leonard is going to start in the middle, and we're going to see what he has after his 2 back surgeries.
Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, host of Lloyd Vance Insider Football 1029, the game, Broad Street South on X at Lloyd Vance. Tomorrow, he joins me on BYP. We recap the games, and of course, the Eagles and Seattle will kind of continue to go around the league. I guess if you want, because we have Monday night, we'll save Lackey and game ball, because we don't know what's going to happen tonight. So we'll kind of tease it.
Yes, I have some ideas, but I don't want to give a chance.
Yeah, exactly. And we think we might be seeing you in a couple hours on Martinez and Company. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. We're going to get it done, and then be with you and Angel again. It's always fun talking to you guys, and good things happening over there at Tony Bruno Network.
Yeah, we're having fun with it. We always appreciate the support. I look forward to kicking with you tonight as well. I'm sure the listening audience does. They're very active on the YouTube live channel. So with that, don't forget, follow Lloyd at X on Lloyd Vance. Check him out every week, because the Eagles play tonight. He's typically 8 to 9 with Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. So we'll talk in a couple hours, and of course, we'll do it again tomorrow. Appreciate you, pal.
Q, thanks for having me on.